Hey, welcome back. Another episode of the Moto Academy podcast, the number one podcast in motocross. And yes, I've been saying motocross the whole time. No, I haven't. But now that people have told me it sounds like motocross, I can't not say it, and oopsie daisy. But I promise you I am saying motocross. Motocross, the number one podcast in moto. How about that? The Moto Academy podcast, episode 100 and something. We're really firing on all syllables. This episode, we have a guest. And guess what? He lives in Glastonbury, I just found out. Evan Ambrosio, he is the drummer for State Champs, which is a super cool band, and I've been obsessed with music my whole life. I always felt like I was a musical genius, but had no musical talents. And today we're going to talk about everything music, everything touring. I'm really curious to ask him about touring and comparing that to the Moto Academy tour because I'm doing so much traveling and touring as well. I think that'll be interesting. We're going to bench race and talk some moto, of course. And yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. Evan seems like a cool dude, and he lives in my town, which is quite awesome. So enjoy this episode, which, by the way, is sponsored by Element. Go to drinklmnt.com/AJCat330 and try the Element electrolyte powder that I'm using on a daily basis. I just mixed some raspberry salt into this water. I did about a half pack because I'm not working out today, but I still need those minerals and those electrolytes that keep me up and running. If you use drinklmnt.com/AJCat330 link, you'll get 8 flavors for free with your order so you can see which ones you like. I think they're all pretty good. Actually, I don't think they're all pretty good. I think they're all really good. So go check it out. Without further ado, Moto Academy podcast featuring Evan Ambrosio. It's funny that you live as close as you do.
I know. It's really, I can't believe it. I mean, I just moved here, I think officially in like 2019.
And where were you before?
Surprise, New York, which is where I grew up. So like 40
it's
minutes
called
south
Surprise?
of yeah.
Oh, really?
Really, really small town. I love it.
That's where you grew up?
Yep. Grew up in a rural town. No neighbors, which is kind of why riding dirt bikes and playing drums was great because no neighbors to complain because
cool.
I'm a very noisy person. So it was nice growing up in a really small town. But is
your family still there?
Yep. They're still there.
Surprise.
Yeah.
My mechanic is from a town called Sandwich.
Oh my
in
God.
Massachusetts. So
Sandwich, Mass. I
fake
think I've
town
heard
names.
of that. Yeah.
It's it's on the Cape.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe you have heard of it.
Yeah. It's beautiful though.
That's
I
fun.
do love just kind of the small town feel.
Mm-hmm.
So moving here is a little bit of a transition, but honestly, like where I'm playing drums now, I have my drums in South Windsor. I don't know if I want to give up too much away, but
South Windsor area is awesome too. I don't know if it's south or which part of Windsor.
South Windsor is beautiful. It's where my wife grew up. That's where we were before. And honestly, my neighbors are great.
Yeah.
That was my biggest concern is playing drums in a house. You're like, people like to complain, especially like having it be your job. It's really hard to tell.
You're not playing in the apartment now, are you?
No, I can't. I can't. Yeah, my neighbors would kill me.
Oh my God, yeah. So where do you go to practice?
I still go to South Windsor.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how often? My questions are probably going to be all over the place.
No,
so
it's
bear
okay.
with me.
It's okay.
But I have always had an obsession with music.
Mm-hmm.
Yet no musical talents, unfortunately. Okay. I really wish. It's not too late.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think I'm going to learn with Millie, and that's going to be the motivation now. So I'll learn piano with Millie. I would love to even learn how to sing. Yeah. Because I want her to learn how to sing. So
absolutely.
But I've always had an ear for it.
Yeah.
And honestly, when I heard, I'm a big Rick Rubin guy now.
Okay, yeah.
And when I first started diving into knowing about Rick Rubin, I'm like, that's kind of how I've always felt.
Yeah.
Like I hear it, I feel it, I understand like what could make a song maybe better.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Rick Rubin really is.
Yeah, I mean, and he likes to say, I mean, I don't know too much about him, but he does say that he doesn't know how to play anything. But honestly, his taste is so amazing that he kind of just knows what is just good. Yeah,
and eclectic too. Yeah. I mean, when you see the list of artists that he's worked with,
incredible.
It's insane.
Yeah, he's a complete master when it comes to songwriting and just even knowing how to put things together. It's very cool to just see someone that creative in that space.
Are you drums and drums only?
Yeah, unfortunately. Okay. I wish that I started with something like piano. It would have helped me out a little bit more in my career. But like you said, even with like Rick Rubin, you kind of know what your taste is. And so even explaining with the rest of the band when we're writing, it's not hard to communicate like, hey, can you try this or that? Like, even though I just play drums, I can still communicate with the rest of the guys, like what my preferences would be. So
do you read music, or did you not even learn that way? You just learn?
I did learn how to read like snare drum music, and I played in jazz bands throughout high school. But I haven't read since then. Okay. To be honest, it's not as important, at least in the rock world. There's a ton of other, musical genres where you probably should read. And I have a lot of friends that, if they get a gig, they might get called for a gig the next day, and they can chart things out and write it down so it makes sense to them. And it's definitely helpful, but in our scene, it's not necessary.
Okay.
I should have kept up with it, but I didn't.
And my brother went to Hart School of Music in Hartford.
Yeah.
And he auditioned on the piano, but I'm pretty sure he was a drummer throughout high school.
Oh, cool.
And I think he learned the drums by the formal way, by reading and learning how to do it that way. And then he learned the piano just by ear. And when he auditioned with the piano. He just did it all by ear, which
that's incredible.
Is how I've kind of started to learn. We have a piano upstairs.
Sure.
My arms and hands get so tired. I don't know if it's that way with the drums, but oh my God, I don't know if it's because I'm trying to hold my hands like this.
Yeah,
you give me 2 minutes on the piano and I'm toast. I'm just like, I got arm pump right away.
Oh, exactly. Well, yeah, it's probably muscles you're not used to using in that way, at least, because I feel like drums is a lot like moto. Like we get a lot of the same injuries hand wise with like the blisters and things like that. With where you hold the grips is kind of where the drumsticks happen. But with piano, when you have to especially you have to stretch out your hands and things like that, it can be really awkward.
Not do you that get I play arm pump piano. When you drum.
We do. So mostly I've learned it's different now that we play with like a metronome live, to where I'm not less excited, but I'm not starting off too hard or too fast. Now that we have a metronome, like I can kind of pace myself a little bit better, where I'm not gripping the sticks like death grip, which is kind of how
What's the metronome and what is that doing?
Oh, so metronome is just pretty much it has count-ins to the songs. It's just a really annoying click in your ears to make sure that you're on time with the band and in tempo. And for us, we have count-ins that like will lead into the song. But having that, or if you don't have that, you might start a song off too fast and like grip too hard on the sticks, which will just lock up your arms completely. Oh. So you kind of have to learn how to pace yourself and try and do stretches as best you can to help with that. But it happens every once in a while. When you haven't played shows or gigs in a while and you're getting back into it, you're always going to have some sort of lockup. It's no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, because you're working muscles that are specific.
Yeah.
I mean, it's same with me. And right now, the crazy thing is I think people assume I ride all the time, right?
Yeah.
Because especially we have so much content.
Sure.
People are like, man, you first of all must be traveling nonstop, which I'm not right now at all. Yeah. It appears that way. And you must ride all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't. I almost never ride. So when I'm at class, like the little bit of demonstration work that I do is my riding.
Yeah.
And it's such specific muscle groups.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually been good for me because in the last year or two, like I've done so little riding compared to the past that I now have empathy and understand the average people that are showing up for these classes when they do the 5-minute or 10-minute stand-up drill and they're complaining about all these muscles. Before I was like, are you kidding me? Like that's not even, this is so easy.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, oh, all right, I get it now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Especially like when because I don't ride very often at all. But when I do, it's like you said, you're using muscles you're not used to using, especially if you're trying to do everything that you teach, which is the proper way of doing things, which is not easy for me. Yeah. But yeah, your arms are burning or lower back or legs or whatever it is. It's funny how quickly for motocross and people, I don't feel like people outside of motocross really understand how physical it really is. I feel like a lot of people that I talk to, it's like, oh, they're just sitting around. And I'm like, no, these are the most tough, like, amazing athletes on the planet. And I feel like people don't really understand that.
No. And because it can look so easy when you are watching it from the outside in.
Yeah.
And it almost can start feeling easy too. Like sometimes when I go out and ride, I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm not doing a whole lot, but give me 2 laps. And I'm just like, uh-oh.
Yeah. Well, especially like all the pros like yourself. I mean, you guys just make it look easy. You make it like you hop on there and form is perfect and you're hitting like, especially Supercross is such a beautiful looking sport.
Yep.
Like it's just fun to watch, but also, I mean, you guys just make it look so easy, but there's not a shot that I would ever go on a Supercross track.
So music and dirt bikes in the Moto Academy, we have so many musicians.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
I
many.
love that.
There was one day where I don't know who popped it off, but somebody posted a picture of a guitar and then must have done a call to action to see how many people played instruments. And it was just, it felt like everybody in there also played an instrument. I couldn't believe it. It made me feel bad about myself because I don't. But there are so many moto people that are into music. So you started, I overheard your conversation upstairs. You've played the drums since pretty much forever, since you were 4. Is that what you said?
Well, I started seriously playing at 10. I think that's when, because before my only focus was motocross. Like I just was obsessed with motocross as a kid. Still am. But
so Moto came first.
Moto came first.
Okay.
I was absolutely terrible. Loved it. It was just like your first sense of freedom. And then through school, I kind of like naturally was good at it. So like 5th grade is when I officially started. I think you're like what, 9 or 10 at 5th grade. And then I could naturally do like a roll on the snare drum, and then picking up things on the drum set wasn't as hard for me. And so after
Were you in like band in school?
Yeah, band, and then jazz band in like middle school, high school. And then after that, it was just an obsession with that, because motocross, I wasn't very good at all. It was just kind of fun to do, but like drums, I could see myself really excelling at. And so I just took off from there. So I've been playing for probably 24, 25 years at this point.
So are you close to my age? 30?
Yeah, 35.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you grew up in New York. Moto came first. Did you race like District 34 and race locally, or what was your riding like?
I've only raced at Claverack. I don't know if you
Okay. Yeah, Claverack was my first race.
It was a really great track, especially for the first time.
Is it still around or no?
I don't know. I haven't been in that local scene
Claverack,
in a very long time.
That's a throwback of a track.
Yeah. It was really fun. I mean, I will still say it's probably one of my favorite days of all time. Like there's nothing that matched that. I think it was probably the slowest anyone's gone on that track, but I don't think anybody had as much fun as
What were you on when you raced it?
I was
Little
on
bike or
1989 CR 125.
Oh, so big bike.
Yeah. I forgot I was not very old.
Were you even a teenager yet?
Yeah, I was like 12, 13 maybe. My uncle got it for me, and he lowered the seat so I could fit on it. And riding around my property, because my parents had a lot of property growing up.
Yeah.
So I had never gone to a track before, and then I got thrown to the wolves. I'd never seen a rough track, and I'm sure at that point it wasn't even rough comparison to how.
So you went from just like field riding to Claverack race.
Yep. And it was.
Did you
awesome.
get last, or did you?
Oh, I got dead last. Yeah.
Okay,
I
got
fell
dead last
over.
in my first race too.
Fell over, broke the clutch. It was a disaster, but so much fun.
Yeah.
I was so green to it that my family didn't know there was 2 motos, so we kind of just like packed up after the first one.
No.
But it was like I still remember that day being like one of my favorite days. Like nothing.
Did you ever race again, or was it one and done?
I raced one other time in Claverack and got about mid-pack.
Cool.
Yeah, which was fun. But
Cool.
then after that, that's about the extent of my racing career.
That's awesome though. It's always interesting because it's such a it feels like a specific thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm always curious how people got into it in the first place. Right?
Yeah,
did your parents ride?
No, my dad had like a motorcycle, like he had an old Goldwing, but my brother got gifted a 1977 CT70, like the trail bike, like on off, and the second he got that, I was obsessed.
And who gifted it to him?
Just a family friend.
Oh.
They just they weren't using it, and they're just like, here, you can have it. And then I had to ride it. And then after that, got a XR 100, and then just loved it. So.
Yeah, that's the thing with dirt bikes. It's like, forget about it. If you get introduced even a little bit, I feel like it hooks people right in.
Absolutely. Well, it's like, especially as a kid, it's your first time of freedom. Like your first time you can actually like go somewhere or go riding or take yourself into the trails and just have a good time. Like, I feel like the second someone gets on a dirt bike or a motorcycle in general, they're hooked regardless. Even doesn't matter the age really.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like what I want to do, especially with the band. I love showing that I'm into motocross because it's not a sport that many people, there's not a ton of eyes on it. But I feel like there's so many people would absolutely have so much fun and love it. So I try to wear as much moto stuff as I possibly can.
Yeah, which is cool because I've seen you. I feel like, have I seen you with Moto Academy shirts on before?
Yeah, I have.
I need to make sure.
I have the gray. All your stuff is also printed on great things.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, like
we
great garments and they're comfortable. So
cool. Well, before you leave, these might even be your sizes right here. I'll leave you with some stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
So that way, yeah, especially if you're wearing it, I think that's really cool.
No, absolutely. Like I try to have it just be like my thing because I love when people come up and talk moto. Like it's fun because people want to come up, talk drums, talk band stuff, which I always love because I'm just absolutely lucky to be in the band that I'm in. But when someone comes up and talks about the race or anything, it makes my day. So anytime I can wear a moto shirt, anything at all moto related, and have conversations, I'm all about it.
And how did you get? Because I feel like when you popped on my radar, I also noticed that you and AC knew each other somehow. How the heck did that happen?
So
he's a big Blink 182 guy, which makes sense after I now listen to state champ stuff. I'm like, okay, this makes sense now.
So I met AC in 2015, 2016. I just noticed that he followed the band. And I had followed his career. He's probably the first amateur that I remember. Like, well, back in the day, he's retired now. But I remember him being like, he was going to be the next James Stewart. I know it
makes me feel old.
I know it's crazy, but I remember him being like this crazy amateur kid. All his videos that he had back in the day were incredible. So I kind of followed his career through the amateur ranks, which is probably the first time. And then when he hit pro, I noticed that he was following state champs. So I just hit him with a follow and hit him with a DM, like, please, if you ever want to come to a show, like, I'm a big fan, like, it would be great to meet you. And he came right out, and he's the nicest person.
So he took you up on the offer?
Yeah. He came right out, and he's, whenever he had time, because obviously training and everything like that, it's not really easy to line up our schedules, but whenever he could, he was there, which is awesome.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I have class with him, I think a month from today, actually.
Dang.
So I'm excited because I've had him at class before, and when he was in the 250 class, this might have even been pre-COVID, maybe 2019.
Oh, wow.
And he was, to this day, I have to say he was our best guest instructor, and that was 5 years ago. Yeah. So he's only become more articulate. It's cool to see. He was in the booth this weekend, wasn't he?
Yep.
Was that his first time ever in the booth?
I mean, for SMX, yes. I
so.
think he was. Was it Southwick? I think was his first booth appearance in the outdoors.
Oh, did he do the booth there too?
Yeah. Well, yes, he did a few outdoors. I think it was Southwick, and I don't know if it was Ironman, but it was one of the.
He's good at it, huh?
Yeah, naturally. Yeah. I mean, if you talk with him, even in how he is on, as you know him, it's exactly how he is in person, and he's just so easy to talk to, and he's so great at articulating everything so well that it was a natural progression. I feel like people knew that he was gonna go do that.
Yeah, he always has been a sharp cookie. I remember listening the first time I ever realized it, and I was like, whoa. He was doing Monster Cup. One of the first years that there was Monster Cup, I was racing the 450 class. He was on a Super Mini, I think, racing the Super Mini class, and got interviewed after the race as this little Super Mini kid.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to that interview going, what the heck? How is this kid know how to talk so well?
Yeah, he's so smart.
Homeschooled all the way through. So, yeah, must just have had high-level parenting. I mean, obviously. Yep. And they worked on the right things because he thinks the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've met his mom, and she's a sweetheart, and I know that he really values just education overall. So he's always constantly learning, which I think is massively important. And you could tell with his interviews and everything that he does is he's so like perfect for that role.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting how it's cool that those guys want to. I was listening to a Gypsy Tales clip the other day. I think it was Deegan on Gypsy Tales, and they were talking about how Carmichael or Stewart and these guys basically are donating themselves and their time. Yeah. The fact that they're on the broadcast, yes, they're getting paid, but I doubt they're getting paid that much money, Oh,
I'm sure.
So it's like for AC to want to do that, it just shows that he wants to be able to help the sport and grow the sport. which is why I want to convince him to just do more Moto Academy stuff too. I'm like, man, if you think that the broadcast gets a lot of reach, which it does, I'm sure. Yeah. I don't know how many people watch outdoors or watch Supercross, probably a good amount. Yeah. But Moto Academy gets a lot of eyes on it across the board, and our social media posting is so consistent that I think we're in between 10 to 20 million views a month.
It's incredible.
So it's quite a bit.
Absolutely amazing.
You know, and I would love for Adam to be a part of it on a consistent basis. He's just Moto Academy to a T.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I feel like he would absolutely smash that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel lucky that we have James Stewart and Ricky in the booth. And having Adam is going to be great. But if he could do Moto Academy things, he would be amazing at that.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited. So dirt bikes, backing up again. Dirt bikes came first. Then music popped into the picture.
Yep.
Do you remember your musical taste growing up, like right when you started to play the drums? Was it always the same taste that you have now?
Yeah, I mean, well, as I've gotten older, I feel like as we all get older, our music changes quite a bit. But I mean, yeah, pop punk, especially back in the early 2000s, was kind of at its peak, in my opinion. I know there's a lot of people that would say differently, or when the peak of pop punk would be, but it was on radio, television, all these bands like Blink, you know, you watched
Sum 41,
yeah,
or Good
Sum
Charlotte,
41, Simple Plan, all those bands were like, just MTV still had music videos, and Fuse still had music videos, and all these great like channels where you could watch music videos, and you were just really exposed to it. My older brother had a band back in high school that I really liked, and I always thought the drummer in his band was the coolest person ever. So it kind of just gravitated towards that. But yeah, pop punk was what I really liked, but nobody in my hometown played that. It was all kind of like metal and screaming music and things like that. I was just wanted to play with whoever wanted to play at that age. So I kind of like got into that a little bit. And now just like pop music is kind of what I really enjoy, or pop country, things like that. Still pop punk, but it's a lot different than it was back when I was a kid.
Is State Champs genre technically pop punk?
Yeah, I would say we're still considered pop punk. We're more on the pop side than the punk side. There's such a broad term for it. There's so many bands in the scene that kind of fall under the umbrella of pop punk, but yeah, I would still say we're pop punk.
Has the integrity of your band now remained the same? Is it the same characters from the beginning, or have you switched people in and out? Because what I've been so surprised by is like when you hear the history of some bands, and I never realized this, there's a lot of interchanging going on or people being switched out, and I didn't know that was the case.
Yeah, we so I'm not even the original drummer. We've swapped out quite a few members. This lineup has been the same since 2014, so I would say this is the most consistent.
Okay, yeah, that's a long time.
I think that, like, just early on in the band, especially with State Champs, they kind of took off a little bit. And
prior to 2014,
2010, 2011 is when they started getting traction and like signing to Pure Noise Records, which is the record label we're still on.
Okay,
but I feel like trying to get people to commit to touring and things like that, like I feel like a lot of people want that, but when it's like, oh, like I have to leave my job, like, and especially back then, touring, you're not making money, but you kind of have to take every tour you can get. So it's kind of hard to keep people there because it's like, you know, their circumstances change. So luckily, since 2014, we've had pretty much the same lineup. We had one person leave in 2020, our second guitarist, but other than that, it's pretty much been the same lineup since 2014.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool. And yes, I can see how that would be hard. And the way I can relate is just because I own a business and have employees. So it's hard to get a team of people to work together. Yeah, very, very hard. But once you do, it's magical because like everybody's in harmony and it makes sense. And but it is really hard to get it there. What is your musical taste outside of pop punk? Like you're hopping in the car, you're listening to music. What are you putting on?
Well, I really enjoy the band Camino right now. My friends' bands I listen to a lot. Like my friends and Bill Murray are doing really well. You know, I'll listen to pop country things. It kind of changes quite a bit. Yeah, I listen to a lot of podcasts. Honestly, most of the stuff I listen to is Moto podcasts at this point. Yeah. But as far as music, yeah,
how many hours a day of music are you listening to? Sometimes zero?
Yeah, sometimes zero. Not too many. Like if I'm going on a drive or a run or something, I'll probably throw on some music, but I don't listen to it as much as people probably would think. But I'm trying to listen to more just because you want to always take inspiration from everything. So I'm trying to get that more in my daily rotation of just putting on music or putting on a playlist or even trying to find new music as much as possible, just because it's so easy to get stuck in a rut.
I annoy the crap out of Allie because I have music on in like the most inconvenient of situations. She's trying to deal with Millie and I just got music playing somewhere. But right now at least, and it's changed a lot over the years, if you went in my Spotify, you'd be like, what the heck is wrong with this guy?
I think that's great though. I feel like there's like a stigma of like guilty pleasures, and I hate that term because it's like you like what you like and you shouldn't be afraid. And I love when people are like, oh yeah, I listen to, like you said, classical or rap or pop country or whatever it is. Like I think music is so great now because it's so easy to consume music. You can find artists from all over the world and just like, it's so easy to find. And I think it's great when people have just an eclectic taste.
Yeah. I just love it
Yeah.
in every way. So like my Spotify right now, and I listen to music also in like specific ways. So what comes to mind is like when I'm on a flight, and what I do when I'm on a flight is I will listen to Mozart while I'm reading because it doesn't distract me while I'm reading. It actually helps me. And I think I have a book, The Mozart Effect is somewhere on that wall, and it talks about education and child development and listening to certain types of music to help with child development and brain development. It's extremely, extremely interesting. But there's something about when I listen to classical music, when I'm reading, it helps me retain the information.
That's great.
So I have the classical music on when I'm reading, and then I will like I'll start to get to a certain point where my mind will almost begin to drift off, but I could tell like I'm going into like brainstorm mode.
Yeah.
So I'll just shut the book and then I'll change the music to lately it's been like 70s playlist.
Awesome.
So I don't know, a ton of Fleetwood Mac and just stuff like that. And just brainstorming up to wazoo. So I'll have my notepad over here and I can close my eyes, or I always sit window seat in the plane. I love looking out. And it just like, it's almost like a brainstorming process for me. But I'd say between classical and 70s music has been where it's at lately.
That's great.
It's just about strictly that. What else do we have? I mean, anything current would be folk, probably, I guess. Cool. It used to be early 2000s. It was strictly pop punk. Yeah. It was Sum 41. It was all of that type of stuff. Yeah.
I miss when that was the era, like when
it's like dirt bike video game songs.
Yes. Yep.
Basically is what it was.
Or Dave Mirra's BMX or Tony Hawk games, whatever it was. Just the early 2000s had a really great
Sublime.
Yeah.
Was that in Dave Mirra or one of the BMX video games, I think? Yeah.
That was.
Yep.
And that's what I think is great between our two scenes is that there's a lot of crossover. Like a lot of moto people still like our type of music or just music in general. So it's been really fun to even, meet people.
I know Sexton's he has same kind of musical taste as AC, I think. Right?
Yeah. Chase has come to a few shows. He's incredible. Yeah. Super nice guy.
That's cool.
And I think Adam put him onto that. I know Adam's put us onto a lot of people, which has been amazing because, just being okay, can my friend come to the show? It's like, oh, who's your friend? It's like, oh, Chase Sexton. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, yes, please, let's have Chase come to hang out. But yeah, it's been really fun to see how many people really enjoy music and moto at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. It makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like it is the same type of person, and I've just been really wanting to have it on for Millie's development as well, and have her just I so badly, if I want her to be into anything, I want her to be into music so badly. I just feel like music is one of just the purest forms of creativity.
Yeah.
Right. Moto is a very creative act as well. but what I do is racing. Technically, I think the teaching now that I do is more of a creative act than racing is. Racing is more competitive, but I'm just so into the creative act nowadays that music is what it's all about. Music and art and all of it. Millie is big into handpan.
Oh, cool.
Do you know what that is? It's like this big orb looking thing with like little divots in it.
Yes, and is that the one that has different like tones and stuff for the yeah. That's very fun. Yeah, very cool.
I mean, she's into music. You can tell it'll catch her attention, and she'll stare at the screen if it's on. She's obsessed with Stevie Nicks. Like, there's certain artists that she loves to listen to, but when that handpan comes on, she is in the zone staring at it. There's something about it, and I think actually that is what a lot of those people are, like meditation people, right? So it's certain frequencies and vibrations that are like meditation.
Absolutely.
And yeah, Millie's into it.
You might have a drummer on your hands. We'll have to get a drum set down here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the podcast studio, we're going to build like where you pulled into the driveway straight ahead. There's that little red shed.
Yeah.
I think we're going to build that into like a guest house and another garage setup with the gym and podcast studio there.
Oh, perfect.
So either the music stuff can go in there or the music stuff will all come down here.
That's kind of what my wife and I are hoping, is that we can find a spot that has a spot where I can play outside of the house, because drums are just so loud. But absolutely having a music studio is the best.
Do you sing at all or no?
I don't sing. I mean, I can like sing if I wanted to, but I feel like playing drums and singing at the same time, I won't be as consistent.
Is that not a thing? So I know in bands, like there will be multiple people sometimes that are singing. Is it never the drummer?
Oh no, there's a lot of drummers that sing actually.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's just like our bassist Ryan is an incredible singer, and our singer Derek is amazing, and our other guitarist Tyler sings really well too. So there's kind of no need for me to really sing. And especially like I'm not as confident with my singing to where I'd want to put myself out there. But yeah, especially playing with drums, there's a lot of things I have to think about throughout the show. If I added singing, I think it would just be a little bit too much for me.
Did those guys have formal music, like a singing instruction, or not even necessarily?
I don't think so. I know that our singer recently has just taken lessons, just because it's always good to figure out the proper way to do things. But he wasn't like formally trained before that. Just kind of like, it's for maintenance and making sure that he can last through the show. It's just to try to do his job as best as he can. And I don't think the other guys had any formal training. It's kind of like a natural ability that I think that, especially with years and years of songwriting, you're kind of just used to singing, and then they've been doing it for 10, 15 years at this point, so it's kind of just second nature to them.
Are they all your age roughly?
Yeah, we're all 30 and above at this point.
And you've been together as a band for 10 years, so 24 to 35 or
yeah.
Let's talk touring then, because traveling and touring is something that I guess I'm pretty well accustomed to.
Yes, absolutely.
You guys, what year did you sign to a record label? When?
They signed, I'm pretty sure, well, they signed before I was in the band. I think it was either 2011 or 2012 when they got signed to Pure Noise Records, or we got signed to Pure Noise Records, and I joined August of 2012. And pretty much the second that I joined we started to tour. Okay. So they had done one full US tour without me before, which was still the summer of 2012. So pretty much since 2012 until now, it's been nonstop touring, other than the pandemic.
Okay. Yeah. And so your timeline, I guess, was not far off from mine. Like, I turned pro in 2011. So my crazy traveling started right around 2011, 2012. Yeah. What does a tour look like? Like, how often are you gone? Walk me through that.
Well, it's different now, because now we're trying to prioritize being home a little bit more now that we're older and have, my guitarist has has kids, and we all have wives now pretty much. So we're trying to be as home as much as possible. But normally it was touring 8-10 months out of the year up until the pandemic. And then the pandemic kind of made everything go on halt from the touring world. But yeah, pretty much. Yeah, especially like now we're having a record come out in November. So this next year, we're probably going to be gone most of next year, just in on a tour.
Are you on a bus?
Yeah. So we're a bus band now, luckily.
Okay. Luckily, why,
it,
as opposed to what's the alternative?
So when you first start out, you buy a 15-passenger van and whatever trailer you can get, and you're driving yourselves. So if depending on the tour, especially if it's a bus routed tour, which means if the other bands are on a bus and you're in a van, you have to do those extremely long drives that the bus driver will do yourself. So there'll be times where you have a 12-hour drive, and the second you're done playing, you have to load up and drive to the next show and just drive overnight. So it can
it's like the band is packing the stuff up and doing the driving themselves, like privateer style.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Exactly. It's the band, all hands on deck, loading up the gear, loading up the trailer, and like going as fast as not as fast as possible, but just trying to streamline it to the next. Streamline it to the next show. Buses are easy. Like, if you feel really lucky, you just you play the show. Now we have like techs, which is like our mechanics. Like, I get off stage, my stuff's taken care of. I can go either meet fans, shower, whatever, just decompress and go to bed in my bunk, and then wake up in the next city. So it's like super easy.
So you have a driver.
Yeah.
You're driver, on a proper tour bus, the whole deal.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Dang.
Yeah.
So it's you're like factory now?
Kind of. Yeah. I think there's different levels. I think
different levels of factory.
Yeah. So I feel like, when you see bands like Blink, like they all have their own bus. And there's like
each individual member has their own bus?
Yeah. Well, at least I know they have done that. I don't know their specific thing now, but I know that like they're big enough to where they can have their own bus, and they have semi trucks to carry their production and all that. So it's like there's different levels.
Yeah.
But we're so lucky to even be in a bus, because it's really hard to even get to that.
And is the idea that you're hitting locations that make sense? That are close to each other? So are you going to, let's say, Washington State and trying to hit locations in the Pacific Northwest, or is it going absolutely just God knows?
Some can go crazy because you have to book it around other bands and their tours. So one band might have the venue that would be super convenient for your next show to be, but the venue's already booked. So you have to go somewhere like super far away just to come back to where you were to play. Mm-hmm. So with booking agents and people that plan these tours, it can be really difficult navigating all the other tours that are going on to try and make your route as convenient as possible, because it's also the added expenses of you have to drive 10 hours in a different direction, way more in gas, way more in everything else. So
are you ever hopping on a plane and going to the next spot?
No, not necessarily. Really? It's usually close enough to where you can drive through the night and get there, because load-in times, especially on a headline tour, you're probably like production's supposed to be setting up around 11 a.m., 10, 11 a.m. So your stage is built, so that way you can get all your gear on stage and hit sound check by like 2 o'clock. So usually you're close enough to where that can happen. But if I don't know if you ever went to the Warped Tour.
No.
And back in the day.
No.
But
isn't that local? Where is that?
It was all over the States. But it would just jump around to different like cities, and you'd look at the routing. All of my friends
used to go to that, but I never went.
And you'd look at the routing and be like, what the heck happened here? But it's so hard to plan around all the other tours. Yeah. So it can be a crazy routing, but it's usually pretty
man.
easy.
So then when you hop in that bus, you could be in there for 10 months straight, essentially, or you're taking breaks and maybe flying home for a little break here and there?
How does that not work? Necessarily straight. Like, I would say that the longest tour was Warped Tour, and I would say that was 10 weeks where we were in a bus.
Okay.
Now you're gone for 3 or 4 weeks, and then you're home for a couple weeks, and then you're going out. So you're never gone for a super long time. It's just like, like now we'll have our full US tour that starts in November and December, but then we have something in like January and then February, then we have some time off. And then, so it's not straight through, but it's still enough to where, you want to get home and be home for longer than a week and a half, 2 weeks.
Yeah. It's tough. My schedule has thankfully gone one direction, and that is easier and easier. But when I was first building this business, I think I peaked 2022 is my biggest year. How many tour stops? What's the most that you've had?
Oh, I don't even know. I'd have to look, but
100 plus, 200 plus.
Yeah.
Okay.
100 plus, 200 plus, I would say is probably.
When you
would be
go
high
to
year.
a location, are you playing multiple nights sometimes at a location?
No, not usually. Like sometimes these bigger like arena tours, if you're a support on, they might have multiple dates in a city.
Okay.
But it's not usual. Like it doesn't usually happen that way. At least at our level.
So you're just going to that many places.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah. So in 2022, I did the most that I'll ever do.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
And it was 100. I think it was right at 130 stops. So now the downside to that was there was no coordination as far as like I was not going to an area and hopping in a bus and driving 3 hours to the next one or 7 hours to the next one. It was fly in, fly back home, fly back. I mean, so it was a lot of time on an airplane that year. And so I was probably collectively gone. I mean, you could at least double the amount of days that I toured to days that I was gone. So all of 260 days gone plus.
It's incredible.
Which it sounds like you're probably more than that even. Or
I mean,
at least close to it.
It can be. The last few years, we've kind of made our business in a way where we can be home a lot more.
Yeah.
Just because that is super important, especially everybody has their own things that they're doing on the side to where, you know, we want to tour and it makes sense because over touring is a really big issue too. Because if you over tour, your ticket sales will go down and it'll seemingly seem like, you know, you're not as buzzing as you were maybe even at the beginning of a record cycle. So you kind of want to tour strategically where, you know, oh, this tour makes sense to do. The power of saying no is really important on tours. Sometimes you can devalue yourself as a band if you're touring and taking everything you can. So being home is super important, but I can't imagine flying that much. Flying is one of my least favorite things.
Really?
Yeah. I don't like being in airports. I
don't mind it. I think for me, it's just, I guess, my time to be by myself.
Sure.
Especially now having a baby. It's always hectic and something wide open. So getting to be by yourself is quite nice. Yeah, I really don't mind flying at all. What the heck were we talking about a second ago? I had a question.
The buses and
like a minute ago. What the heck were you talking about?
how many dates we were.
Oh, out kind of saying no. The value of saying no. I'm curious about that because we've done our tours in so many different ways that I have felt that we have watered down locations before to where it's like, ooh, you know what? This spot's doing really well. Let's do 2 or 3 stops there this year. And then always when we do that, we have to go back to 1 stop there or 0 stops there the next year because we find that we overdo it.
Interesting.
So I think it's kind of the same dynamic, really.
Yeah.
People get used to it. And then even if they're big fans, they may not go.
I never thought of it like that just because, I mean, it's in our case, it's almost like being too accessible. Like, oh, state champs will be back here. If I miss this tour, they'll be back next year, or they'll be not even next year. Well, they'll be back in a few months.
Yep.
Like
I think it's the same dynamic.
Yeah.
I think it is. You want to create the FOMO a bit by like, okay, are they ever coming back?
Yeah.
And our classes always do the best when it's a scenario like that. Just got back from a class in Italy last week, sold out, and it was, I think, same thing, right? Like it's Italy. They probably expect that I'm not going to go back there for a long time. So a lot of people show up. It's tricky to book. You have a booking agent or manager or somebody that's doing all that. Yeah. And you guys are kind of helping and giving your input, I guess, on like your preferences and where you'd maybe want to be when.
I mean, we could give preferences, but I mean, our booking agent he's especially really good with, you know, comparing what our number. It's very just calculated with, you know, what happened last time, and like it's very calculated to where we could give preferences, but it might not make sense to. It might hurt the tour if we're like, hey, we want to do 2 nights in New York City, or we want to do this. Like he has a whole formula where he knows the best routing, especially like I said before, with booking around other venues that might be booked up.
Yep.
So he can say, hey, what do you think of this routing? And we can say, yeah, maybe, you know, we want an off day. Like there might be times where we need a drive day because the drive is so long to where they don't really tour with us. So it can be painful if they, book a venue that's 14
they're not
hours
the ones
away.
experiencing it.
Yeah. But our booking agent's really good with that, where he'll give us a list of dates and we'll pretty much just be like, yeah. Or, when he's building the tours, we can say, yeah, we want to tour with this band. But all that stuff is kind of taken behind the scenes and they figure all that stuff out for us, which is nice.
It's hard to do.
Yeah.
We just built out our entire 2025 and we did it the last few weeks, and it's not easy. It's not easy, especially when you're relying on tracks to also, you build out a theoretical schedule of what you think will work, and then you have to hope that the tracks on the dates that you picked, it all makes sense. Is your manager avoiding being booked in before or after certain types of bands as well? Is that a thing?
Oh yeah, billing is a huge thing. So like where you're placed on an ad mat, so the poster for the tour, is really important. And bands will fight over that a ton because there's a lot of ego in band things. Like I'm sure there's a lot of ego in motocross stuff, where it can be a bad look for your band if you're billed underneath a band that might not be as big, but there's a whole song and dance behind the scenes with management trying to get their bands billed higher or getting more money for festivals or whatever it is. But yeah, it's a huge thing wherever you're billed, like what line
are you saying
you're on.
Build?
Yeah, like where you are placed on the bill.
Okay.
So like whether you're the opener,
so if you're like seeing the flyer or whatever of the tour,
flyer, exactly.
And you're seeing the band names.
Yep. So if you're on like the bottom of the page, it's not as a big deal as like being the top and the biggest, like your font being the biggest. It's really funny to even think about just how big your font is and where it's placed on a piece of paper or a flyer. It's hilarious how big of a deal that actually can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it.
Yeah. I mean,
I get it.
It's your level of importance on a page, which is really
so
funny.
You guys are then touring. So is it a tour? Is it a tour where you're always with and being connected with these same other bands that are on this flyer?
Yeah. So like we have a headliner this fall, and it's the same groups from start to finish on that specific tour. So we'll reach out to some bands, especially on a headliner, because it's different when you're being reached out to be on someone else's tour. But for our tour, that it's specifically ours, we reach out to bands that we think would be really great to help us sell tickets. And then, once they confirm, it's the same throughout. Like wherever they're billed, if the lowest person on the line is the opener, and then the further up you go is, we'll be the top where we're the headliner and we're playing last. But if we're being asked to play.
How many come on before you?
I think this tour we have 3.
Cool.
3 before us.
And how long of a show is that? 3 hours?
I would have to look, but I would assume doors would probably be at like 6 o'clock, and there's like an hour between doors and the first band. So it started 7 p.m. and then we'll probably get done at 11:30 ish. Okay. We'll go on at 10:30, 11 around there. It can change depending on the tour, but generally
typical for you guys would be you're on for an hour and a half.
Yeah, if you're headlining. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which is really fun. Even though there's benefits of being a support, like if you're supporting a bigger artist and you're playing for 30, 45 minutes, like it's just very different, but it can be fun because you have to win people over. Like that, it's a whole different pressure. If you're a headliner and people are buying tickets to see you and you're playing for an hour and a half, like it's a lot less pressure than playing in front of, a ton of new people who don't know who you are, don't care, and you have to win them over. It's really fun. It's stressful, but really fun.
Or you guys, I don't want to pressure you too much to talk finances at all.
No, absolutely.
When you guys are going on tour, is there an incentive of any type? Are you guaranteed X amount of money? Are you really relying on like pushing those tickets and trying to get people to show up to those things? Is the record label paying you a flat rate a year and just all said and done? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So, it's not a set guarantee of how much we're getting paid. Like we'll get a guarantee of how much we as a band are getting paid to show up. But through that, and I'm sure with the moto world, it's the same thing, especially owning your own business. You have to pay for the bus. You have to pay for, hotel rooms, transportation, all of that. So at the end of a tour, what's left over the profit will split. So the less money you spend, the better it is.
But, and who's in charge of managing that budget?
We have a business manager as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So
got it. So the business manager is on your side, technically?
Yeah.
Your side, as in like the record label is its own entity?
Yeah.
And then the business manager is kind of like helping you guys organize the money that you're getting paid from the record label?
Exactly.
Got
yeah.
it.
And with the record label, they're pretty much just financing the records themselves. So there's no tour support for our label. Yeah.
Okay.
Which some labels do offer that. It's usually like major labels and things will have tour support and things like that. But for us, luckily, we're in a position where we can kind of take control of that ourselves, and kind of that's not something that they have to worry about, which is great.
Cool. So probably an opportunity for you to make more money.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah. I mean, we're extremely lucky. With record labels, yeah, we'll have a budget to make the record, and then that'll cover our music video costs, marketing, all that, which we have to recoup, which is also a whole other interesting part of the music industry. But our label has been great to us. I mean, that's why we've been with them since 2011, I think. They don't really tell us what to do. There's some labels that'll be like, we don't like this record, so we're going to shelve you. We're not going to put that record out. We're going to keep it there because we don't think it's going to do well. Our record label trusts us completely with what music we're making and what we're putting out, which has been great.
Can you talk more on what does that mean? You have to recoup.
So like we'll have to recoup the money that they put out for us. So, say a record costs $50,000, like we have to recoup the cost of that to get money afterwards. But they have to.
So it's almost like you're being loaned money at the beginning?
Exactly. Yeah. It's pretty much a business loan.
Okay.
Which is great.
Is that how all like record deals would be? Kind of like you're kind of getting loaned that money at the beginning.
Yeah,
like
to make a record.
Bonus?
Yeah, and then obviously it's a business for them, so they have to recoup their money. And then, yeah, I would say most are that way.
So would that be why when you see like big time famous artists and they're still freaking going and touring, you're like, why is this person? Is it maybe because they're locked into a deal where like they don't really have much of a choice?
Yeah, it could be.
They've got to keep going for a little bit.
I'm sure it depends on the artist, but yeah, I mean there's been people that have been locked into bad record contracts, whether they might give you an advance for all like 5 records. There might be a 5 record term where you have to make 5 records for them, and they might have a really nice advance for you for that, but then that's all the money you're getting from that record label. And every artist is different, and every label
no matter
is different.
how many albums you sell.
Yeah, it depends.
It doesn't even matter.
It can, yeah. They might be like, here, we have you for 5 records, and you have to complete this term for us, and that's it. You might just have to be locked into doing it. But every record contract is completely different, so it depends. If you see an old artist playing music, it might just because it's still very profitable for them, and they just enjoy being out there, and
I more so just think of like the young artists that come on the scene, get incredibly popular really quickly, and then they're just like burning themselves out doing 250 shows a year or something completely stupid, and it's like, why are they doing that?
Yeah, well, now the music industry is super different. I mean, now a lot of artists are being found on TikTok, so they'll have a viral moment on TikTok, and then a record label will come in and be like, all right, cool, I want you to recreate that. But sometimes it's not that easy.
No.
So like a lot of these it's almost like hey, you had this really cool thing happen, and they just want to jump onto it really quick, which is super interesting. There's been a lot of great music. I mean, I find music all the time through TikTok. I think it's another great way for people to find music. But yeah, sometimes it's cool to see younger artists, just kind of really playing into the social media game to benefit their business, their band. It's totally different than it was back in the day with growing a band, but it's super helpful. So yeah.
And is the majority of your income coming from touring?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And touring. Would that be the same with just about any artist, any band?
Yeah.
Like, are people making money off of record sales now?
I would say it's a lot less. I don't feel like a lot of people make a ton of money off of record. I mean, obviously the bigger artists are completely different, like top level artists. But as far as our level, like touring, merchandise, all those things are kind of our biggest way of making money. And records, not as much, but we still have like, royalty checks that come in, which is great.
Monthly, annually?
Yeah, a quarterly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that coming from like, would Spotify plays or downloads go
Apple
work
Music.
into that? Okay.
Yeah, all the streaming platforms. Yeah.
Is it super? Because when I was listening to your guys' music yesterday, there was, unless I was reading the commas wrong, I think there was a few that were in the tens of millions.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we're lucky with that.
Yeah. So is that any significant income coming from a song that, let's say, gets 40 million downloads or plays on Spotify, or is it pretty watered down?
I mean, it's not. It's definitely watered down, especially if you've seen any of the Spotify controversies with them not really paying artists. Yeah, it can be. It's not nothing, but it's not as much as I think it should be. But I feel like I'm a little biased being on the artist side. But yeah, it's nice to get those checks in the mail, but it's not. That's not our main source of income.
And when you say merchandise, are you guys selling a lot of stuff online, or is it when you're at tour, you've got your merch set up and people are buying t-shirts and hats and that type of stuff?
Yeah, it's mostly touring merch.
Okay.
But online sales really do help, especially now with, we're working on stuff for our new record. So just trying to really keep up with our online store to make sure that we consistently have new and updated merch so people have something new to look at. Yep. Which I think you guys are great at. I think all of your merch designs are really great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard, especially because the apparel for us is low on that list of priorities. Mm-hmm. And when you're a small business of, like, we have 8 to 10 employees, like you can only focus on so many things at once. Yeah. So sometimes it gets tossed to the back burner. The majority of our merch sales would be at class. Selling the tour shirts. The tour shirts sell extremely well because when you're at class, everybody wants to leave with something, right? It's probably the same thing at these, when you're on tour. Yeah. People want to go to your show and show off that they were at the show wherever the heck it was, right? And have the
absolutely
locations on the back, and people get excited about that. And then we have the boonie hats, which are the hats that I wear when I'm teaching. Yeah. We sell those just at class, and those do really, really well also. Absolutely. We need to take advantage more of selling stuff on the website because our website gets a lot of traffic, a lot. Yeah. So we're missing out, I think, but it's hard because we can, like I said, our team can only focus on certain things at certain times.
Especially like you said with the tour dates, like that is kind of the best way. We always have some sort of tour shirt like that where it has all the dates on whatever tour that we can be on, just because like you said, it's so nice for people to be like, oh yeah, I was at that date on this tour, or a lot of people are like, hey, what dates were on that tour. It's just a nice thing to look back on, and always it sells really well. But yeah,
do you sell it online, or do you just sell that tour shirt at the tour?
At the tour.
Okay.
Generally, yeah. If it's on that tour, that's the only time you're going to get it, which also adds like an exclusivity type to it, which is great. But yeah, I mean, that's where I got my stuff is from your online store. I haven't been to a class yet, which is a bummer.
We need to get you.
Yeah, I know. I need to.
Especially in 25, we're going to have so many local because I think Allie and I, at least for the next year, will be staying here. So if you're still going to be in CT, then we'll get you to one.
Yeah, especially, the track I mostly go to is 80K out in New York.
Yeah.
Which is quite far from here, but that's kind of where I would meet my friends to go riding. And I wanted to do a course there because it's pretty easy. It's not really an intimidating track.
Yeah, it's a good track. I like it.
Which is nice because I am still very, very bad. So it's nice to have a track where I don't feel intimidated by anything on the track, where I can like probably focus on what you would be talking about and focusing on the proper technique versus being like, I'm too afraid to hit that.
Yeah, we have to be careful where we book our tracks, because I've run into many situations where I show up and I'm like, these people are going to be just trying to get through this track, and they're not going to be able to focus on anything that I'm talking about at all. What the heck was I just going to ask now? Going back to tour shirts. Oh, do you know who's doing all that stuff for you? Same thing, business manager?
For our tour shirts?
Yeah.
Actually, that's something very hands-on with the band.
Oh, it is?
Our lead singer, Derek, he went to school for graphic design. So
Okay.
we're incredibly lucky. He'll throw out designs. We'll hire artists as well to, like, hey, we're thinking of this is the idea, and they'll send us stuff back. But mostly it's our singer, Derek, making designs, or our bassist, Ryan. He's very
Cool.
into the vintage scene, so he's very good at throwing out, hey, this design would work. It's nice because they're very different too, like Ryan being on the vintage side and Derek kind of knowing what is new and current. It's a really nice hybrid of what our fans are going to like, because you kind of have to cater to what your fans are also going to like too.
Yeah.
You can't have a wild, crazy vintage design when you're selling to, 18 to 30-year-olds. It's
Your demographic?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, about that.
Okay.
So yeah, sometimes you'll think this really cool design will work, but it's the simple just State Champs logo. So it's so funny how different designs can do different things, but our band kind of has their finger on the pulse of like what it works for us really well, and that's definitely something that the band works on.
When you're on tour, how many merchandise items do you have available?
If it's a headliner, we can kind of do what we want. We usually do like 4 t-shirt designs, a hoodie design, a hat, specialty items. We kind of try and do as much as we can. But if you're a support, you're limited. You can only maybe have 2 t-shirt designs or a
Okay.
t-shirt and a hoodie. You can't have more than what the headliner has, and then you have to price match to what they sell it to as well.
Oh,
you can't make
interesting.
up your own prices to undercut.
Oh,
It's another like intricate thing about touring where
makes
it's
sense,
just
I
like,
guess.
yeah.
So where is it being when you're at a venue? Who's selling it physically there for you? Like, is it your business manager or your tour bus driver, or who the heck's slinging the merch and selling it when you're there?
So we have our merch guy.
You just have a merch guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And luckily we have such an incredible guy who does all of that. He knows how to restock properly, because that's another thing. Like, you don't know how much you're going to sell.
Yeah, the
So-
timing of when to restock is tough, and we screw ourselves. We've done it time and time again this year where we've run out
Yep.
and then order. So what happens? We have a lapse of a couple classes where I got nothing,
Yeah.
which is
And
not
then,
good.
it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
And then the people are a little upset because they wanted to get something to remember it by. There's been festivals where something happened on the merch where within shipping it got messed up and we didn't have anything to sell, and that's a huge part of how we make money. So it really helps to have someone who's on your team. Like, he's on the tour bus with us. He's honestly, the merch people are the first people in the venues, like setting stuff up, and the last people tearing down. Like, they're one of the most important parts of your crew, because that's how you're making most of your money. So
Is he also dealing with the merch for the other opening bands?
it depends. Usually in a headliner, we don't want that, but also like we want our friends to also make money as well. So if it doesn't affect their job, sometimes you can have it. Especially like
Otherwise,
different
if that's
festivals.
not the case, then how are the opening bands or whatever you call them? How are they selling their merch? Are they literally going over there themselves after they play?
They can. Yeah, it depends. I mean, smaller bands where they'll still have touring crew for smaller bands, you're always probably going to have a merch person, because also you don't want to get robbed. So you have to have someone kind of at the table.
Yeah. Okay.
And like a tour manager to take care of like settling the shows, which is like making sure you get your guarantee. The tour manager makes sure that you have everything you need to play, and make sure the show runs smoothly. So you're always going to have a couple of crew, whether or not you have techs to set up your instruments and all that. It usually comes on later, but the first thing you should probably get as a smaller band is a merch person, because that's kind of, the best way for you to make money as a young artist, but also you need to make sure that someone's always there. But sometimes we let, especially if they're bands we're close with and our merch booths are close together, sometimes having them work both is just easiest.
Yeah. Is the merchandise your number one source of income?
Yes, I would say merchandise and our guarantees.
Okay.
For touring, at least.
Yeah. At the tour dates for Moto Academy, it's actually I'll never forget the first time I had Adam Cincerello at a class. I think he must have, this was early days of Moto Academy, so it would have made sense. We were in the same hotel room, right? So he goes into shower. When he comes, this is after class. When he comes out, I was frantically trying to organize and count the money from that we sold merch from that day, and it's all over the bed. So when he comes out of the shower, he must have showered more quickly than I thought, and he comes out and the whole bed is just money all over it. And he goes, "Is that just from today?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "What the heck?"
Yeah.
He's asking all these questions. But yeah, people, I mean, they want to remember the experience.
Yeah.
They're usually, those are your hardcore fans, the ones that physically are willing to take the time and spend the money to go show up. I'm really grateful, but it's amazing how they'll, drop $80, $160, $240 to grab a hoodie, a hat, a couple of t-shirts. What do you know what you sell your stuff for?
It depends on the tour, but I feel like merchandise has gotten more expensive just because the cost of everything has gone up. Even and we don't want to print on terrible garments.
Yep. Do you know what you're printing on?
Honestly, I don't. I'm not too much in the merch world. It depends. Like, I love when we print on comfort colors and things like that.
Yeah, comfort colors good.
Works really well, but it's getting so expensive. You want to find the best possible deal. That way, because the thing is, especially with this, like, you don't want anybody to feel like they're ripped off. Like, even if we do like VIP for one of our tours, we want to make sure that they're getting the value that we're putting up. And that, because they're the most important.
Yeah.
Like, number one, the fans are the most important.
Getting the value and then some.
Yeah.
Like, you want to over deliver.
Yeah, exactly. Because at the end of the day, like, we're incredibly lucky to play music for a job, and that's only because people care. Mm-hmm. So if you start treating them like, start to rip them off in any way and start mistreating their fans, you're just doing yourself a disservice, and you're doing them a disservice. I mean, the fact that people care to go out to the Moto Academy or come out to a state champ show is so incredible.
It's freaking
and we're
amazing.
So lucky. But I also think with what you guys do, like, your designs are so great that I don't think it's, I feel like people would want to buy the, do you know Dirt Studios and things like that? Yeah. I feel like
nice stuff. I just found it the other day, actually. I was like, oh, this is good.
Yeah. I feel like you have a brand that can kind of transcend just the Moto Academy of, doing your courses.
Cool. That is the goal.
Your designs are great.
We just haven't had time to do it yet.
Yeah. I think you're on the right path, because I think the branding, I think the shirts, I mean, the hoodie that I have, I think you guys are on the right path. And honestly, I think it's your garments are great. Yeah,
thank you. The only bummer with that is, like, well, let me see. These ones are these comfort colors? LA Apparel.
Okay, yeah.
More expensive, probably.
Yeah.
One of those shirts is probably costing us a t-shirt front and back print $25 to make. It's so expensive.
You have to sell it for, 40, 50.
We're selling it for $40,
yeah,
which makes me feel bad, but it's like, I think when you take a look around, I think $40 for a t-shirt nowadays is pretty standard.
It's normal. Yeah,
the
which is
shirts,
sad, but it's normal. I mean, it's not like that. That's still a deal, because there's people selling, t-shirts for more than that. Yeah. And on worse, because there are people that want to just make sure that the profit margin is the highest, so that they can make the most.
Most people go that route, right? Yeah. Most people are buying a absolute piece of crap Gildan.
Yep.
I mean, maybe Gildan has nice stuff too, but it's like, buying the cheapest 100% cotton, the worst cotton you can get, something that literally you can wear it one time and then wash it.
Yeah.
And they're still selling it for $40. So it's like, my goal is, I didn't even really, and this is still the goal with the apparel. Yes, it does make money at class, without a doubt. But my goal is, I just want people wearing stuff that says the Moto Academy on it. That's the only goal. So therefore, I need to create stuff that people think looks cool, and a good material that will last for years.
Yeah.
And honestly, some of the Moto Academy shirts, I wear them all the time.
Yeah.
They last forever.
Yeah.
Right? So 5 years down the road, I'll still be wearing the same t-shirt. That's what you want.
Yeah. 100%.
You want somebody wearing that state champs t-shirt 15 years later.
Absolutely. And especially, like, vintage is a thing now too. Like, it's massive. So when someone comes up with a 10-year-old state champ shirt or an older Moto Academy shirt, like, it's cool. Like, that adds in a whole other layer of, what is cool and what is trending.
They're like, they almost become collector's items, and it becomes like a statement when somebody shows up to a Moto Academy class and they have an OG shirt on, which the OG shirts are the AJ Catanzaro Moto X Academy, right? So it's the old
remember
logo.
those.
And we still have, I bet you I could probably find you one here. I have a whole basement full of boxes full of random t-shirts and stuff. But people like take pride in the fact that like they were on the train early and they've got the shirt, the OG shirt, the collector's item shirt.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's fun. It's just, it sucks how expensive that they are, and it kills the profit margins.
Yep.
But especially when you're selling them online, because they you factor in shipping and yeah. And then hoodies, forget about it.
Yeah.
So expensive. And then
just
I got to price hoodies at like 60 or 80 bucks, which really makes me feel bad, but it's like,
That's
okay,
normal.
maybe it's normal.
That's normal now too. I mean, that's kind of what you kind of have to go by. And it does stink, but it's also just a part of the times. Everything is just more expensive now. It is a shame though, because you want to make sure you're giving them the most value, but you don't want them to break the bank too, because you just want to make sure they have something to commemorate, or if they want to commemorate it and just have a good time, like you want to make sure they can afford it.
Yeah.
But also you need, it is a business as well.
Yeah. And a lot of the people too, so many of our fans and the people that come to class or even subscribe to the app, they're spending all they got. You know what I mean? Like they don't necessarily have expendable income for motocross. They're just so passionate that they're just living paycheck to paycheck, but they love the sport.
Yep.
And they love the community of the Moto Academy. So yeah, I always have and always will. It's actually one of our core values that's written on the top of when employees work for Moto Academy, and they can see it, offer more and better service for that than which you are paid. Yeah. And I will always operate in that way. I think that's part of the reason we've maybe got the following we have is it's just, I take care of our people.
And I can see that too, because that's what I started following you quite a while ago. And I loved how you kind of structured the business. And I feel like I respect that you can tell that you care about those courses, and you can like even adding riders like Jet or Adam or, all these elite riders as well as yourself, just showing up and teaching the proper way to do things and the way that you do social media. And you can tell that it's a real value, which is a huge bummer that I haven't gotten out to one. Cause like you said, you've built great FOMO.
Yeah.
At least for me. So like I would love to get to one of the courses, cause you can tell it's a value.
Yeah. Cool. I mean,
at least from the outside.
That was the goal with the social media is like, I actually told the team, I said, hey, and I invest a lot of money in our social media too. Yeah. I'm like, if somebody's clicking into TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and they have any interest in dirt bikes whatsoever, my face or the Moto Academy better be popping up.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what we accomplished, which is good.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree with that, because and you guys are so consistent with it. Like you said, it seems like you're riding a dirt bike every day in different parts of the world, but it's so like social media is such a huge part of even just growing any business, but specifically bands. Like if you can really nail that, like how you guys are really treating this, it's how your business grows.
And consistency is the key.
Yeah.
When people ask me, and a lot of people do in the Moto Academy app, like, hey, AJ, I really so badly, I've been thinking about starting a YouTube channel, or I want to get sponsors. Mm-hmm. Where do I begin? I'm like, well, you need to create your brand and your platform, and you need to post consistently. I'm like, I don't care if you think people don't care about you. They'll start to care about you when you post every single day. Yep. And it could be something simple. Hey guys, I'm going out to ride right now. Toss the GoPro on, ride for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Oh, that was good. I worked on this, this, and this. Next time I'm going to try this. Okay, see you guys next time, next week or tomorrow, whatever. So simple. And people think that other people don't care. But again, as soon as you start, we post twice a day on the Moto Academy. We post twice a day on my personal channel, twice a day on the Moto Academy podcast. And we have 5 to 7 Instagram stories going up on each of those every single day. And then those are also across every single platform imaginable. And in addition to that, we've got, I think, 4 to 6 long format YouTube videos in like 7 different languages. We have language channels and everything on YouTube coming out on a weekly basis. And it never doesn't happen because I have 3 full-time employees that are dedicated just to that.
Yeah.
And people can't keep up with it, right? So if there's other trainers or other people out there trying to build their brand, most of them, like most people, are trying to do all of it just themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't possibly be consistent. You're going to miss a day. You're going to miss a week. You're going to miss a month. Yeah. And it's like, you can't do that in social media. People will forget who you are really quick.
Completely agree. Especially, I wish I practiced what I preach a little bit more, because like you said, consistency with social media is the most important thing. I just feel like a lot of people are also really afraid to put themselves out there and be consistent, because, like, I'm not going to lie, if you want to start a YouTube channel for whatever it is, your first 100 videos are probably going to be terrible. Mm-hmm. But you kind of have to push your ego aside. And even if you're getting 0 views, just be like, I'm going to be consistent. This is my goal. I'm going to put this out. And people are going to come. Because I feel like with your channel, I feel like in the beginning, there might not have been many views, but your consistency and, well, being a professional, you're a professional motocross racer. So, like, you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about. But being consistent with that, I feel like, is a massive thing. Just being like, all right, maybe this might not be good, but then you might have that one video that takes off, and then you get your following.
That thought alone is all you need to keep in your head to keep you going.
Yep.
The next video could be the one that gets 1 million views or 10 million views or 100,000 views or 1,000 views.
Yeah.
Right. The very next video that you post could be the one that does it. But I think you're exactly right. Putting the ego aside to just be okay with working really hard, putting yourself out there, and maybe 6 people will watch it.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to happen.
And that's totally fine.
Yep. Like, it's going to happen at first.
It doesn't matter. And also, like, even if the video is bad, you are learning. That's the thing that, and I need to be better with it too. Cause you know, I let my ego in the way a lot of times, especially with content, whether I don't think the drum video is good enough, but I feel like it's fine if it's bad. You can take it, you can learn, you can grow. Like, every video you put out is just more experience. And I feel like if you're scared to start your channel, or you're afraid that you might not sound good on camera, whatever the thing it is, you can that's just practice. Even if you put them unlisted. So just you're watching them at first, I would recommend just posting, because it doesn't really matter. I mean, like you said, you can just go for that next video that might hit. And if it doesn't, you're gaining experience. Yep. That's all that matters.
And there's so many ego factors to it too. Like, you can remind yourself, whether you're the one getting 5 views or 500,000 views, there's going to be plenty of people out there that are judging you for their own reasons anyway.
Yeah.
Right. When you're getting 500,000 views, trust me, there's plenty of people judging you. When you're getting 5 views, there's a handful of people judging you, like, oh, maybe this guy's failing or whatever. But again, it's all for their own problems, their own reasons, their own insecurities, always. So I always try to urge people not to let that stop them. And then also just knowing that you need to be in it for the long run. Like, you've got to have that vision 5, 10, 15 years down the road. Because if you're in it for short-term gratification of trying to get views right away, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
And it didn't for us. Still doesn't. I mean, we create videos all the time that I think are amazing, and they do not do well. And not doing well is a relative term, right? But none of our stuff gets that many views compared to what I think it should. But we just got to keep putting it out there, keep putting it out there in hopes that it's going to resonate with some people. And
it definitely does.
Yeah, hopefully. And I think if I've done anything well, especially the last 3 to 4 years, it's been completely putting my ego to the side. I really, really try to check myself every single day and, like, lean into being a dork, lean into, like, what do I care? You know, because people are going to judge me anyway.
Sure.
And my social media guy put out a post, this was like a few weeks ago, where he put out a post without context about me doing an experiment, saying I wanted to race for 5 years and win a Supercross championship.
Yes.
Right?
I saw that clip.
Oh yeah. People were eating me absolutely alive. Guess who doesn't care in the freaking slightest? I was pissed at my employee because he put it out in a way that, like, he didn't even explain that was an experiment.
Sure.
And then deleted the clip, and it was like,
makes it worse.
He didn't execute well on his end, but even so, whether he executed well or not, it's still going to get misconstrued and misunderstood by the other people that are living within their ego. So it's like, I got to just do what's best for me. And what I think is best for me is being able to help other people understand that they can do anything that they want.
Absolutely.
Right. If I can get beatered and battered on social media and be just fine.
Yep.
Like, who the heck cares?
Well, that's kind of how you know you're doing well. If you're getting a little bit of hate on the internet, I feel like a lot of people are scared for the hate, but on it, because you can find it no matter what. Like if you're succeeding, you know, by putting out all of your videos and running an incredible business, like you're going to get hate because there's people that want to do what you do that can't. And it's not always a circumstance. Like you said, there could be tons of different reasons why people throw hate on the internet. I think it's ridiculous how much hate there is, but
it's always because of them.
Yeah, always.
And there's never an exception.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's always good to self-reflect and make sure you're not being a total a-hole.
Well, constructive criticism's different. If someone, I've had people be like, hey, like, you know, the way you're playing is going to cause an injury. Like, you should think about this or that. Like, great. I'm fine.
Yep.
But the whole, like, oh, you suck. Like, throw something constructive in there. If you don't like what I'm doing or whatever. But if someone's just saying, hey, you suck or you're bad, like, I don't really, that doesn't affect me because it's coming from a place where, like you said, they could be going through something. Like, also, if you're not a professional to me and you're telling me I'm terrible, like I don't necessarily, and you're not giving constructive criticism, I don't necessarily care. I'm not going to listen to the hate. I like to like watch reviews of our records and things like that, whether it's good or bad, as long as it's constructive. Like that's totally fine. I'm all about trying to get better and learn. And if you're going to be constructive, that's totally fine. But if someone's throwing out hate, it's just noise. Just forget it. Like that's all that matters. Like,
yeah. And too many people let that steer the ship for them, for their own lives, right? What they think other people are thinking about them.
Yeah. It's super easy to get caught up. You have 1,000 messages of how great you are, and then you have that one message that's negative, and you're going to focus on that. And it's just why? Like, you have so many more people in support than the one person who's just being negative. So just don't listen to them. At least that's how I
100%.
And I'm lucky where I don't, like, the drum community is actually very supportive, which I'm lucky with. I feel like Moto guys, they get so much hate, and it doesn't, like, for me on the outside, I mean, I ride very rarely, but as a complete fan of the sport, every single person who can even make one of these races is such a hero. Like, to even show up and qualify for any one of these races, like, to get any sort of hate blows my mind.
Yeah.
Like, all of them. You watch any person who goes and qualifies for any of these races at your local track, you're going to be like, how is anyone faster than they are?
And also, not to mention risking their lives in doing so. Yeah. And what's weird is it's like, it is such a small sport compared to music.
Yeah.
Everybody listens to music, you know, compared to just about anything. Moto is a small sport, and yet it's like a really divisive community sometimes, or can be, where people are pitted against each other and closed-minded to change, I think is a big part of it. But going back to what you said about seeing 1,000 positive comments and getting stuck on that one negative one, I very much used to be that person, and I'm not anymore. And I think a helpful tip for those out there that maybe are in the situation, and I know not everybody is, where you are getting enough comments to where that's a reality for you.
Sure.
If you're recognizing the one negative comment over the 1,000 positive comments, you need to self-reflect on why that is. That's something wrong with you.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that's where your focus is being drawn. That means that you've got some insecurity buried somewhere about why that comment stuck out to you. Not necessarily even the specifics of that, but why did the negative one stick out to you as opposed to the positive ones?
Yeah.
What's really nice now is I'm at a point in my life where I I don't go on social media all that often because I'm just specifically how I spend my time. But if I am ever perusing through comments or something, I am breezing past those negative ones with a smile on my face as if they're not even there. Or sometimes at the very most, maybe actually feeling bad about that person because I'm just putting myself in like, man, what happened to them that day?
Are you okay?
Or you know, like what the heck is going on with their lives, this poor person. And then spending my time commenting back to all of the lovely comments that are out there, and so many people spending 20 minutes, 30 minutes, like post this giant 3-paragraph essay of a comment. And 5 years ago, I would have breezed past that with maybe at most like it. And then I'd be commenting back, spending 5 minutes, 10 minutes of my time commenting back to the a-hole, not even a-hole, the poor person that's having a bad day. And now what feels good, I guess, is responding back to those negative comments when I do take the time to respond back to them and just trying to be helpful.
Yeah.
In some way, right? Or shift it. Like, you're right. You know, a lot of people comment really negative things, and what I'll say back is, you're right. And then I'll try to say something like really, really quite nice and see if I can kind of guide them the direction.
Also, a lot of the times, if there's a negative thing and you kill them with kindness, like if you...
It works.
Because, you're doing it through a phone or a computer, like that's a real human being on the other end. And a lot of the times, even if people are upset at shows or whatever, if you talk to the person that's upset and just, you know, don't escalate the conversation, but actually try and get to understand why they're upset, their tone will just change. Like if you actually respond back to them like, well, hey man, like try and change their opinion or whatever, just responding back to them. Like sometimes it's just easier to have the conversation with them either through a DM or through the text or through the chat. And it honestly works a lot.
It works almost every time. I have spent many, many times seeing those comments, and I'll forget even commenting back because I know that's going to be publicly seen and just not fair to them or me. I'll just direct message them. And just say, hey, I hope everything's like being ridiculously, ridiculously nice. And 99% of the time, that person apologizes and then is also now converted to a fan. Which is great.
Well, they don't think you're going to see it. I feel like a lot of these people are just
forget
like,
it's a human also, right?
They're just like, oh, this, that, and the other thing, you're bad. And even actually just going back to why I feel like, at least for me, why when I see a negative comment, it bothers me, because I feel like that's always the doubt I have before I post something. I'm not good enough. Sometimes there's like this imposter syndrome of like, I'm so lucky to be here that it almost feels like I don't deserve it. You know, so if you see a negative comment like you're bad or whatever, you're like, oh, maybe they're right. But then you just really got to be like, just be consistent, do what you're doing. Like, look at all the positive, like you're getting more positives than negatives. Like, just don't let that person or that negative experience affect how you want to run things. Like, if you want to post every day, but you're afraid of getting negative comments, just go for it. Like, sometimes I feel like it speaks to the ego when you see a negative comment, like, oh yeah, maybe it is bad or something. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Just post it and do the thing you want to do.
Yep.
I don't know.
And the next post could be the one that gets a million views. Our whole business, the entire Moto Academy, is built on social media. It really is. And the only thing I regret was not starting sooner. I feel like I was late to the game, and yet I was very early to the game compared to most, right? There's still a lot of businesses and athletes that are still resisting the social media push.
And it's funny because as a fan, I love seeing all of them. Like, I feel like even with all the rider vlogs, like for me, I love seeing the behind the scenes. Because I feel like we all get to see what's on the broadcast, all the races, but what goes on behind the scenes, it's so fascinating from a fan's perspective. Like, you know, it's just so interesting to watch what goes into training. Like, how you guys actually are able to compete on that level it's so much fun to watch behind the scenes.
I wish all of the athletes did their own version of vlogs. Like, seeing Justin Barcia's are so fun and funny, and he's an absolute lunatic. And that's how he is. Right. And I think it made a lot of people love him when he can be an a-hole on the track sometimes. Right. So you get to see what's on the other side of the helmet. Cincerello's vlogs were always great.
Yep.
It is a lot of work, but there's also a lot of guys in moto that make a lot of money. And the advice I've always given them is spend 50 grand a year or 60 grand a year and hire a full-time video guy.
Yeah.
It will pay for itself 10 times over. And even if it didn't, even if you just broke even on it, even if you lost the 60 grand, you're creating a community of people that are behind you.
Absolutely.
It's so important.
Yeah. And
so important.
I wish that more riders and even musicians would do more of that, because people are just genuinely interested in it. And it is a great way to grow your brand. And the people that are consistent, like, Christian Craig, like his vlogs, he's been consistent with it throughout the years, and it's fun to see.
Dean Wilson,
obviously Deegan's have been, it's awesome that you can watch Deegan pretty much learn how to ride a dirt bike to being a champion. Like that to me is really cool. Like the whole progression, but that's all stuff as like fans that you're like, oh yeah, this isn't just show up on Saturday, and there's a lot that goes into it, and it's fascinating as from a fan's perspective to see all of that.
And also really fast forward. Like your kids and your great grandkids will be able to follow like a documentary of your life. Like how cool is that?
Absolutely.
Be able to see where their dad came from or where their great grandfather came from and what they did. Yeah, I'm a big believer in it. And I really hope that people listening to this take the time, do it. Don't be afraid of what people think.
Yep.
Because who the heck cares?
Yeah, and
just do it.
And that's the thing, like, especially for me, I expect perfection for myself. And I think that's been a huge downfall in my career of like, I'm so hard on myself with certain things. So if there's a video, there's been countless things that I've shot on film and be like, oh, there's a missed hit here. This isn't good. Drummers are going to think I'm terrible. Like, you really have to put the ego aside and be like, no, it doesn't matter. It's whether it's an idea or just something, like, just put it out there has been so hard, because if it's not absolutely perfect, I feel like it's not worth putting out there. But even recently, I've been really into like the journey of people's journeys. So just, I like to see the struggle. That's not just easy. I didn't just become a professional drummer. I struggled for years, and so now I'm trying to be like, okay, I'm having this issue with my playing. I want to like focus on that and be like, yeah, I've been playing drums for 25 years. This is an issue I'm having, and I'm going to work on it. Sometimes you have to check your ego and be like, I'm a professional drummer, and I should be working on this really easy thing or this easy technique that's going to make me better, but I didn't take the time before. And now I want to focus more on those things of like, hey, I have high expectations because I thought all the content I saw growing up, it was just a perfectly played record or this, that, or the other. And I had no concept of, oh yeah, I'm going to have to struggle. I'm going to have to figure things out. I'm going to have something easy that's going to annoy me that I should just know how to do. But it's not about being perfect. It's about the journey to get there, which no one will ever be perfect. But I don't know.
Do you do any reading?
I'm starting to. Like, I want to get more into that. I've been trying to challenge myself with a lot more of those things, whether it be physical or reading. I really need to get into reading a lot more.
You read the book Mindset.
I've been reading the Mindset. I think you posted about it at one point, and I bought it, and I haven't gotten through all of it yet, but I have.
There's parts of it that can be a difficult read, but I think that book is fundamental, and like what you were just describing made me think about fixed mindset versus growth mindset.
Yep.
Right? Being detached from outcome and really being process driven in the growth mindset versus completely attached to the outcome.
Yep.
Of somebody that believes in talent and all of those things of the fixed mindset person. That book was one of the first ones that I read where it really, really clicked and made me understand myself and how I've operated my whole life.
Yeah. And
I'm sure it's not far off with being in a community of musicians where you feel pressured to be perfect or where you think you're getting judged by other high level musicians, or it's all the same in moto. I mean, look at Look at the post of me saying that I thought it was possible for me if I put in 5 years. And I'm using me because it's my life and it's my example to others.
Sure.
The me or the I of it all is actually irrelevant. I just think that it is possible for somebody that is 15 years into a pro career with the foundation that I have to put in 5 years of hard, dedicated training like a pro.
Yeah.
Have all the equipment, have all the trainers, have all of the everything.
Yeah.
I think it's within the realm of possibility for that individual to win a championship.
Absolutely.
But when I say I put myself really under the gun of other high level people that want to comment their opinions and stuff on that, right? When you understand the growth mindset, that type of thing doesn't faze you because you understand why somebody would think that way, and you understand why it is possible to believe. And the more reading I've done, like if you want to borrow any books at any point, like or any of these ones behind me are really, really good ones. Psycho-Cybernetics.
Yeah, we'll have to do a book club or something because I'm honestly very interested in it.
You will start going to the stratosphere. It is the amount of evolution and growth I've had in the last 3 years alone. And it's compounding too. I feel like it's literally doing
I love that.
This. It's insane. From reading these books and learning about ego and identity and the brain, and even really diving into like cell biology and neuroscience and physics and kind of just understanding. I've just gone deeper and deeper in trying to understand the broad scope of all of it.
I love that.
It is so helpful because I'm content. It would have eaten me alive for that post to have gone out and to see all the people that were commenting on it. It would have ruined me for weeks. I can't even, people won't even believe me when I tell you that it didn't affect me for not even a second. The only reaction I had was being mad at my employee because it wasn't executed completely correctly.
Sure.
And even that, I moved past that feeling really quite quickly.
I mean, it's so easy to get stuck. And I feel like that's why I've been wanting to jump more into that. I've started reading the mindset. And I definitely had elements of where I was in the fixed mindset to a degree, to where it's like, and there's a part where it's like, you know what? I thought intelligence was fixed.
Me too.
It's the first part of that book,
too.
right? You know, we're like, oh, well, this is just where I'm at. But that's not, like, reading through that book, even the little that I've read of it is like, oh, it doesn't have to be that way. It's all about how much effort you're putting in, how much work. Like when I would get stuck, sometimes it'd be so easy to just sit there and feel bad for yourself. And now if I'm trying to turn it around where, you know, like, I recently started running. I hate running. But now I'm getting more into it because I was like, all right, like physically with drums, I was starting to phone parts in, you know, playing stuff that I made 10 years ago was really easy. And now 35, it's a little bit harder to play faster paced songs. And I was feeling really bad that like, oh, I'm not playing like I used to 10 years ago. It's like, oh, well, I haven't been paying attention to my body. Like I'm saying drummers as an athlete might be a stretch, but like what I'm using my body, you know, I'm using all of my limbs. If I'm not paying attention to that,
100%.
Yeah, it's not going to be what it was 10 years ago. So I was like, all right, let me just start running. Let me start changing. Let me start doing something because before I was like, oh, that's how it is. I'm just going to play it like this now. I'm like, I'm not okay with that. Like I want to change things. I want to do things. I don't want to be stuck in that. Like, oh, I feel bad. Like there's this aspect of my drumming that's not really what I consider great anymore. So I'm like, let me change things. So I was like, I need to get my physical. I need to get just physically fit now, just because that's how it's got to go. So I was like, I hate running. Obviously, cycling is my preferred, but it's a little bit more. It's easier to just go out and do 100%. An hour run and come back and not have to worry about maintaining your bike or whatever it is. But it's really helped a ton just getting out and being like, all right, I'm just going to change this. I'm going to do something I don't necessarily like, and now I kind of love it. I kind of really enjoy my morning runs now. So it's been really fun to kind of just, I don't know, step into the unknown a little bit and just change something. Even if it's making your bed in the morning. I started just being like, I need to complete a task. And I've read like if you just make your bed in the morning, it helps just like motivate you to do other things. And now like I have a whole routine of like kind of cleaning the kitchen and doing like things that will kind of kickstart me to motivate me to do other things, to kind of just complete like little small tasks as like little wins throughout the day, you know?
Yep. And a big part of it is like the fear of the unknown can kind of manifest itself in the resistance of procrastination.
Yeah.
And procrastination can bleed into a bunch of little different, and it can be very sneaky, but it can bleed into a bunch of little parts of your life where you're starting to procrastinate on this, and you're not making your bed, and you're leaving that dish in the sink for 2 days for no reason. And that's all something, right? How you do one thing is how you do everything. And when you start to become that person that procrastinates a little bit, that could be a big sign that you're afraid of something. And a lot of times people are afraid of the unknown and just trying to get to that next point.
Yeah.
Embracing growth mindset is like you're living in the unknown, because that's what it is. You're trying to level up and do something different, and that comes with action. Yeah. And actually doing it.
And just staying in action. I just feel like just constantly doing something, whether it doesn't matter how small it is, it's really just helped me. Because that was my biggest thing, like procrastinating. Like, oh, there's a show, I'm gonna rehearse the day before. Like, no, now before a show, like I'm playing 2 or 3 weeks out, I'm getting the set list and I'm drilling it to make sure it's as good as it could possibly be. Like the whole procrastinating thing really got to me to where it was like, it's really affecting me now. So now it's great to have those little small things to kind of change to, honestly, from little of what I read that book, it's definitely kind of switched me a little bit. Yeah. And I'm excited to actually finish it.
Keep reading it. When you finish it, call me and I'll give you another one. And
for sure.
You could just come here and keep picking them up, because I think even you read it, we could have a 5-minute debrief of a conversation. I could prescribe you the next one that I think would be most relevant to you. Yeah. The hardest part with me is I am becoming more and more particular about the books I want to read. So I'm wasting a lot of time reading books that I feel like I could have skipped and been fine without having read. Yeah. I could give you some really, not to say you're guaranteed to resonate with them, but I could guide you so that you're not wasting your time.
Well, I feel like now you kind of know what you're looking for, versus I feel like I'm at the point where I'm just trying to find something new. So it is kind of cool to see, you know, with the growth that you've been like, okay, now I kind of know what I want out of what I need to learn or what I want to learn, which is really honestly kind of cool.
It's fun. It's addicting. And one thing a mantra that I tell myself every day, I tell Millie every day, is every day in every way I'm getting better and better.
I love that.
That's it. It's very simple, but it's just that paradigm in your mind of little improvement every day.
Absolutely.
That's it. In everything that you do. And it feels nice.
Yeah. I love that.
It feels nice. I don't get stressed. I'm not anxious. Yeah. Because I'm not pushing things off to the side. I just do them without even thinking about it. Yeah. I just do them.
Well, see, that's the thing right there, is being anxious, being like, I'm not prepared for this, or I didn't do enough, and always living in that anxious state is just, it's unhealthy. Yep. And you can only be there for so long before it really gets to you. So
that's how, I mean, in the books that I'm reading, that's how cancers are formed, and it's your body being out of stasis, and it's out of stasis because your mind and your body are not at one. Yeah. It's like if you're living in the future of anxiety-ridden anxiousness, it's not a good place to be.
And that's why, like, I would always have an issue because I was focusing on the big picture too much of like when I get into something with drums, like this whole, I'm focusing on all of the problems all at once versus like taking, okay, what's one little weak point that I can work on now and just progressively get better with it. Like I would have to be like, I need to work on this and it needs to be better now because this is unacceptable as a professional drummer to be struggling with this or whatever it would be. But now I'm like, okay. Like for example, my right foot has been an issue, like with just like speed and kind of lagging behind a little bit. So now like I'll just do bass drum drills for an hour before I even play. And it just helps because I focused on that one little aspect. I put the work in a little bit and it's not going to be perfect by the end of the day, but weeks and weeks go by and it's like, okay, now my problem is fixed. What's another little aspect of my playing that I can improve on, and just always finding something to work on, because there's always something to work on.
100%.
But if you're focusing like, oh, this is wrong, that's wrong, it's just like you're just an anxious ball of things. You're just not doing yourself any favors.
Yeah. It in reflecting, I never realized the type of person that I was, and I would like deny that I would if you had asked me 3 years ago, like, hey, did you procrastinate? I would have like laughed and been like, absolutely not. And now I just am aware enough to recognize in the situations where I do procrastinate. I think I've just become more highly sensitive to when I'm not feeling 100%. Okay, why is that? And how can I improve it? It's fun. I am so looking forward to, I'm 31. So it's like, I'm so looking forward to the next 70, 80 years of my life of just like trying to get a little bit better, learn a little bit more about myself. It's addicting too, because as you start learning more, at least for me, as I began to really dig deep and learn more, the more I realize I don't know anything, So it's like the more I learn, the more I'm realizing that I don't know any of it. And it's just like more that I want to learn and try to collect more information.
It's addicting. And honestly, that's a really hard conversation to have with yourself. Like, oh, do I procrastinate? Or trying to pick stuff apart about who you are is so hard, but so important to be like, oh, like I loved to make excuses, and I still do. I still make excuses of why I don't, like whether post or why I'm not doing this. It's like, oh yeah, stop making excuses and just do it is kind of how I'm trying to change myself a little bit now, where it's like, I can sit here making excuses all day, but I need to have that conversation with myself. Oh yeah, maybe I'm just being lazy, or maybe I'm afraid of this aspect. Like really trying to have that conversation with you is so important, and it pays off really well. So
yeah, just having the awareness to catch yourself when you go into that program of just like making the excuse again.
Yeah.
We're all guilty of that. We're all guilty.
And especially
we're an hour and 45 in.
Oh,
I wanted to talk moto.
Yeah, we quickly. Absolutely can. I think I love these conversations. It's been so much fun to kind of have these changes. Like you can see small improvements, and it, like you said, it's really addicting. And I just feel like a lot of people will look at a professional motocross racer or a professional musician, whoever it is, and be like, oh, they're
perfect. There because of this.
Yeah, and it's just like, just because you're at the pro level doesn't mean you don't have things to work on. And I always thought like, oh, when you're a pro drummer, like everything falls into place and everything's perfect. It's like, no, like you kind of have to work harder to kind of maintain or get better, because the top is so hard to even get to. I'm not even anywhere close to the top, but even seeing like where other drummers are, or other musicians, like to get to that next level, you really have to do the work on yourself to even,
because it's the fine details at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially like a lot of my things is I don't necessarily love putting myself out there, but that's how I got like state champs. Like I made an offhand comment to my guitarist's brother, and I was like, tell your brother I want to join his band. And I never do anything like that. And I didn't know that they even know who I was. And I got a call the next day being like, hey, do you want to join the band? Like just by putting myself out there and kind of living in the being fine with being uncomfortable. I feel like I need to live more in that area, because the only time I've gotten anything worth it in my life is when I put myself in the uncomfortable area. Like, should I really do this? Should I really reach out? Should I do this? Like it's you're not going to always get what you want if you're playing it safe.
Author, I mean, he writes books. He's more of a scientist than he is an author. But Joe Dispenza, have you heard of Joe Dispenza before? I have a book somewhere, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself is what the book is called. And Joe talks about how creation takes place only in the unknown. Mm-hmm. Because if you are comfortable and you're living in the known, that quite literally means that you're living in the past.
Yes.
The only way something can be known is if it is in the past, or if you are predicting the future based on past events. So you're time traveling either to the future or to the past. So the unknown is actually the present moment of the action of doing something that maybe you normally wouldn't do. And that's where creation takes place. So
love that.
Yeah.
I really love that. Yeah. Because that's something that I've recently kind of been thinking, because it's so easy to live in the past. It's just such an easy thing to be like, oh, because this happened, this is what's going to happen in the future. But you really don't know. And by just putting yourself out there a little bit and being uncomfortable, it has helped me a ton. And I kind of need to live in that space a little bit more.
We practice it with Allie quite a bit, and she's changed a lot. Even when we would go on vacations, I would have her to start vacationing in a different way, where we would book a flight, but that was it. You know, like,
I love that.
So we would figure it out once we get there, and it would be a day-to-day thing. Instead of booking the trip ahead of time, booking your hotels, we would just hop in a rental car and just start driving around and figure it out.
Oh, I love that.
And the experience that it creates is insane and so unexpected and so much better than anything that you could have planned ahead of time. Every time it's like that way. Even if it starts to unravel and things start, like, you can't find a place for the night, which happened to us in Switzerland this time around. We're at dinner with a baby, by the way, at 8 p.m.
Oh my gosh.
Sitting in Interlaken in Switzerland, and we don't have a hotel, and there's like nothing available. We're like, what the heck are we going to do?
No.
And we ended up finding a place in Spiez, which was like 30 minutes down the road. It originally said they didn't have a room, but another website that I pulled up said they did. So I called them. Turned out they did. We book it. And as we're driving up that night, now it's like 9 o'clock at night, and we're pulling into the hotel, I look up at it and I'm like, Allie, we've stayed here before.
No way.
In the last time we went to Switzerland in 2019, we did the same thing. We showed up, we rent a convertible Mini Cooper, and we just drive around and stay at random places as we find them. We stayed she pulled up her phone and went back through the memories of the phone. We stayed in the same freaking place.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And so we book one night, spend the night, get a room with this balcony that's overlooking a beautiful lake, the Alps, and a couple like mountains that are in the foreground from that. And there's a music festival going on right outside of our balcony. And James Blunt is headlining. The day before, you'd recognize all of these bands too. I'll have to look it up because it was some cool bands that I had recognized as well. And right outside of our balcony. So we just have this live concert that we're able to look right down on.
In Switzerland too, which is
and
beautiful.
It's echoing through the mountain, like absurd. It felt fake.
We played a metal festival, which I don't know how sometimes we get put on these metal festivals. It's really funny because we're not a metal band at all. But my backdrop was the Swiss Alps. And I was
so you played there before?
Yes. It's the most beautiful, like driving through the towns, driving through the Swiss Alps is the most amazing thing. But I remember playing that show and I wonder what festival it was, because I was like, I wonder if that was the festival we played.
Do you remember any more details about it?
Don't remember. It was, he definitely was not playing there that day. I don't remember which. I think Slipknot headlined. So it was like a true metal festival. But man, I remember we played on the stage and I couldn't tell you a thing about the show other than I was just looking at the Swiss Alps the entire time, being like, this is the most beautiful part.
How long ago did you go? Was that pre-COVID?
It must have been. Yeah, it was 2019.
It's so beautiful. It looks fake.
It really does. So I can't imagine the backdrop of how that must have been. That must have been so cool. Having a whole music festival that you could watch from your balcony.
Did you fly into Zurich? Or Geneva?
It was part of a UK Euro tour, so I think we probably ended up driving from the UK. So I'm not entirely sure. It was the summer of 2019.
It was called Seaside Festival.
No, it wasn't Seaside. But that is cool.
Now I want to figure out who was on.
I'm so bad.
Oh, Rag and Bone Man?
It wasn't Rag and Bone Man.
No, but do you recognize that name? Because that's who was playing the night that we were there.
Oh no, I don't recognize that. I don't know that I know them.
Plush?
I feel like I've heard of Plush.
Alice Merton, 77 Bombay Street, Veronica Fizzaro. That's going down the list. So when you're talking about the bill, is that what you're calling it?
Yeah. See how like James Blunt is like bigger and the font's bigger and above. Oh, that's cool. That's a cool fest.
Tokyo Hotel. Why does that sound familiar? I don't know. It was more like it it felt folky.
Yeah,
it was
which
my
is
type
cool.
of music.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And especially with that landscape.
Yeah.
Oh, it was
it's perfect.
insane.
Yeah, the Swiss Alps are.
And Allie didn't want to go out.
Unbelievable.
She was like inside with the door shut. I'm like, Allie, get the heck out here. Are you kidding me?
Like, especially that experience. And I try and live in the moment a lot, like more now, like, because we've toured overseas so much that it's so easy to just be like, I'm going to hang out in the green room, so like backstage or whatever. And now the last time we went over in February of this year, and I made a point with my bassist, Ryan, we went out and explored every day because
Cool.
it's just, you don't want to miss it. Especially, I don't know how many more years we have left of doing all of this. Like, we're so lucky. So every time we go somewhere, I'm like, oh, let's do that instead of like, oh, let's play it safe and just stay in by the venue.
Yep.
Because
It is easy to do that too.
it is so easy to
yeah.
fall into that, like, oh, well, I'll do that next time. So did she go out and watch from the balcony?
She did. I
Okay.
forced her to. It took a lot of convincing, but then once I got her to go outside, she didn't regret it.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously.
Yeah. So
You never do when
yeah.
you make the decision to go out on a
course.
whim and actually just do something.
Yeah.
Even when I travel by myself most of the time for the Moto Academy tour, I just go explore. I go to dinner by myself. I'll try to see if there's a park or something cool nearby and just go sit on a park bench by myself and read or something. Because it is so easy to land and just be a loser and just go to the hotel room and do nothing.
Yeah.
Even if you land at like 5 p.m., you get the whole rest of the day.
Yep.
It's very tempting to just go right back to the hotel room.
You go to the hotel and doom scroll. Another thing is important. I set a whole limit on my phone with social media, just doom scrolling. Yeah. Like you said, getting into reading. She
deleted Instagram yesterday.
Oh, it's the way. God. I wish I could. The second that the band is over, I probably won't have social media anymore. But we have to. But yeah, like doing that, going out and creating more experience, honestly. And then even if it helps social media, if you're out doing things too, instead of sitting in a hotel room. So it kind of helps to kind of go out and do things.
My screen time used to be, and keep in mind, like my phone is everything. I'm using it for, I don't use a laptop that stays down here in the podcast studio. So I'm using my phone for everything.
Same.
12 to 16 hour day screen time would be pretty normal. Lately, I think last week, my screen time was like 35 minutes a day.
That's awesome. And but
that's a little absurd.
Yeah.
I think that's unrealistic for some people, but even if it's just a couple hours, that'd be great.
No, but I think that's important though, because I feel like a lot of people are like, they might judge that screen time, but if you're running your business off of a phone, like it's so annoying to always have to be on my phone because of work or responding to emails, band stuff I would love for mine to be 35 minutes. I want to structure it.
Do you know what yours is?
Not offhand, but it's probably 3-4 hours a day.
Yeah, that's great.
Like that.
That's great.
Maybe a little bit more. When I'm home, I try and put my phone down and not look at it as much, or not be in front of a screen, and try and work on something. Just because I definitely fall into the doom scrolling category where it's just so easy to lose an hour on Instagram or whatever it is. Too many great dirt bike riders that I'm following that are doing
Moto
all the
will just eat up all of your time.
All the Insta bangers for sure. But it's a helpful tool, but it's so easy to get wrapped up in it as well.
Yeah. The step one for me, at least, was putting it, or actually I don't bring it up to the bedroom at night. That was
Genius.
a big step. Yeah. That was a big step. And I know that's tough because some people have to wake up to alarms in the morning, but sidebarring from that, something that I read in I think it's pronounced Emile Coup. He's French, so who knows how the heck they say it. He lived maybe a couple hundred years ago. He has a book. I probably have it over here somewhere. It's called Self-Mastery Through Conscious Autosuggestion.
Okay.
And conscious autosuggestion would be like the mantra that I said, actually every day in every way, I'm getting better and better, was him. It's telling yourself things consciously to just download it into your subconscious. So it's just repeating things. What he taught, I think it was him, was that you could internally set your own alarm clock by telling yourself, I'm waking up at 6:30 a.m. Close your eyes and kind of get into a meditative state, which you can learn to do pretty quickly. And just tell yourself, I'm waking up, not I'm going to wake up.
Yeah, I am.
I am waking up at 6:30 a.m. and I'm wide awake at 6:30 a.m. I've been experimenting and not trying it in situations where I actually need it.
Yeah, sure.
But it is working oddly accurately.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So in the situations where I do need to kind of wake up, I'll set the alarm as a backstop somewhere, but I've been testing that and it's freaking working. But yeah, anyhow, I don't bring the phone up to my bedroom. So I'm not on it that last hour before bed. And I don't, when I walk downstairs now in the morning, I stay away from that phone. So I'm not on it for the first hour, at least when I wake up. And that was the key, because now that's made me be more aware throughout the day of when I need to be avoiding it. Yeah. Where before that, when I was in that 12 to 15 hour screen time, those 12 to 15 hour screen time days, that thing was in my pocket
everywhere.
And I always felt like it was vibrating, even though it wasn't. And I'm pulling the thing out and checking it just out of habit. It wasn't good.
Yeah. No, I definitely need to do that. It's funny because I'll like set my alarm, but I'm a naturally anxious person. But I always wake up before my alarm.
Try that auto suggestion. See if it works.
I might have to do that.
I bet you it'll work.
But yeah, I try not to. I try to set like a little bit of a boundary too. With I don't like that you always have to be accessible at all times. I think that there should be times where it should just be family time, and there should be hours where you're not being able to be reached. I do forget to text back though, which is terrible. So
yeah, or it'll just take me like a week. I'll leave it on red, right? So I'll get to it eventually. Yeah, it might take a while.
But it's so funny how that, like, I don't know, just changing the relationship with the phone is something I need to do a little bit better. But
yeah, I think maybe part of it too is being content enough and understanding that it's not a rush. Where I think I was in such survival mode before that, especially owning your own business and being in a band is owning your own business.
Yep.
I thought that everything had to be taken care of and done right that second. Yes. So there were no boundaries. If something had to be done on my phone at midnight, I was working away on my phone. Where now it's like, it can wait until tomorrow. If it's 6:30 and I'm having dinner with Allie, like, I'm not going to pick up that phone. I'm not going to stress myself out and go on it afterward. I'll deal with it at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Yeah. And that's how it should be.
Nobody's going to die. Yep. We'll all be okay. It's uncomfortable at first. Speaking of uncomfortable, that takes a little while to get used to that.
Do you have anybody that works for you that's in a different time zone?
Yeah. So we have Jackson, who is in Alberta.
Okay.
So he is 2 hours before us. Who else do we have? We have Alyssa is in Tennessee, so she's 1 hour before us. And I think everybody else is East Coast. I think
it's so funny because we have people that work from us from wherever. So West Coast, like my guitarist Tyler and I were early risers, and he'll hit the group chat at 8 a.m. where it's early for them, and I just feel like there's no. Have to be reached at all times because like our managers and everything are West Coast, so sometimes things will come in later, and you're like. So you kind of always have to be available. But
are you doing all that via iMessage or something?
Yeah, iMessage, emails, all that.
So one thing that we've done recently, actually within the last 2 months, is we had all of our chat, and we had the Moto Academy Mastermind chat, we had an admin chat, social media approvals chat, finance chat.
You know how it is to be in a band.
Web marketing chat. There was a million of them. And what we've done is we've moved them all into Slack. Yeah. Have you heard of Slack before?
Yeah, I've heard. I haven't used it.
Maybe experiment with it and try it. It is amazing. Huh. And what it does is it saves a lot of time because it just organizes things in a way to where like what's relevant and important to you. Mm-hmm. And it is very easy to go through there. And there's actually in the top left of the main screen on Slack, it just says catch up. And you click into catch up and it just flips you through. And you can keep them as unread if you want and flip through them. You can respond them and mark as read. It's been game changing because before we had, and speaking of anxiety, like all of those iMessages and trying to like figure out what the heck was important and what wasn't, and what was business and what was just, people screwing around and chatting. Yep. It was too much to keep track of. And now Slack is like straight to the point and it's really easy to keep organized. And it syncs up with ClickUp, which we use as our task management system. Dropbox, which all of our footage, like this will get popped into a Dropbox after this.
Love Dropbox.
Our Google Calendars. Everything that we utilize, Shopify even, and Zapier, I think it's like all connected to this Slack.
Okay.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check into that.
It's awesome.
Yeah, because I mean it works well, but it'd be nice to have something that's a little bit more efficient.
Yep. It is. And I thought the iMessage was fine. I was like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But now going to Slack, it has just leveled it up that 15 or 20%, and it makes a world of difference.
Okay. Yeah. I'll have to check into that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I probably have to hang out with my wife at some point here.
Yeah.
We're 2 hours in.
Do your thing.
The good news is you live right down the road. So I would love to have you back and just chat moto.
Absolutely.
I haven't talked about Charlotte yet.
Yes. Okay.
And I had a freaking blast watching that race.
Yeah, it was fun.
And I wanted to bench race with you a little bit.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
maybe we could watch the next one, whatever that one is.
Yeah.
Chicago, maybe.
Yeah.
We could do a little debrief podcast after.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Will you be around for the next few weeks?
I'm actually going to be in Chicago next weekend.
Oh, are you?
Which is funny. Yeah, we have a festival, Riot Festival next Saturday.
I actually might be
Saturday.
too. I fly into Grand Rapids tomorrow, and then I want to say I'm somewhere out that direction again next weekend.
Come to Riot Fest.
Come to Moto Academy.
I would love that. Yeah. I don't have a bike, but
we got a Stark. Floating around. Which would be the bike you'd want to ride that thing too?
Yeah, I definitely want to buy one.
And I have two here. So if you ever want to hop out and just go exploring the state forest or anything, just text me and we can make that happen.
Just be patient. I'm slow. I feel like a lot of times
I've got the Cardo system, so I'll just put some music in my ear and I'll just ride nice and slow with you.
Perfect.
Cool.
Well, I thank you so much for this. This has been incredible. I've been a huge fan, so this is awesome.
Thank you for being so down to earth. Thank you for popping on. Okay, there you have it, folks. Moto Academy podcast episode. Who freaking knows? 100 and something. Toodaloo.